How are you guys doing? I mean, just in general, how are you faring? Because I would imagine when you bring up this story, which happened to you, in 2015, but it's all coming back, it's almost like you're reliving the trauma. And are you guys doing okay? I mean, has it been therapeutic for you to bring the story out, or is it hard to relive it all?
It's a little bit of both, but more than anything, it's been empowering to finally have a voice and to really be able to share the whole truth about what happened. Especially because for years we had to stay silent. There was pending legal cases, and we kept seeing some lies and misrepresentation being kind of recycled in the news system. Um, it's helpful to have a voice, and it can be really cathartic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. So this happened to you. We're talk about what happened to you, but this happened to you in 2015. But which made me wonder, why did the book come out now? But is it because there was pending legal cases and you were unable to speak publicly about it?
Yeah, we had a civil case against the city of Vallejo that settled in 2018, and then it took us 3 years to write the book to make sure that it's as accurate and as compelling as it can be. We didn't want it to be rushed by any means, and we want to make sure that it's really um, from our voices and victim centric, because sometimes with these crimes the focus can be on the perpetrator, and the victims get lost. And we know we've got a lot of power from hearing other people's survivalship stories, and we're hoping to help by sharing our story.
Yeah, it really is amazing what you guys endured, and how you've come out from on the other end. It seems to have somewhat of a happy ending, if it can have a happy ending. But let's talk about it. So March 23rd, 2015, you go to bed. It's like any other night. And tell me what happens. Tell us what happens.
So we were awoken by a group of well-trained, armed intruders. One of which who spoke to us, saying, "Wake up! This is a robbery. We're not here to hurt you." At first, it took a little bit for me to even realize that this is real, and not just a nightmare. But when my eyes popped open, I saw flashing white light. I saw red laser dots scanning the walls and our bodies. I was instructed to tie Aaron up, and I was in tied up. We were given these blacked out swim goggles and headphones with pre-recorded messages of instruction. We were forced to take a sedative. And initially the recordings said they were going to ask us personal and financial information. So I thought, okay, maybe this is a robbery of our bank accounts. But eventually we realized that it was, in fact, a kidnapping, and I was going to be taken for 48 hours while Aaron had to give a ransom.
So they come in, and you at first, you definitely see two sets of legs, right? I mean, that's what your memory is, right, Denise? That you saw that, even though they told you not to look up, you definitely were aware there was more than one person in the room during the.
Yep. Yeah. Before I was bound, blindfolded, or drugged, I was told to walk to the closet, and my head was down. So I definitely was trying not to look up at their faces. But as I passed the bed, I saw two people standing at the foot of the bed and saw up to waist level. They were all in black, and it appeared to be holding something at their waist. And one of them followed behind and bound me.
And later they would tell, or sort of during this, they would tell you both individually that they were wearing wetsuits, right?
Correct. Yeah. At one point I was shaking, and he asked, "Are you comfortable?" And I asked for a blanket. And when I was put into the trunk of a car, I asked for that blanket, and he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're all wearing wetsuits here. I forget how cold it is."
Mm.
For me, when I was told that, I just was like, I mean, I couldn't even process it. But at one point it was said to Aaron too. And for him,
Yeah, I believe that they did to eliminate the possibility or reduce the possibility of hairs or DNA being left in the house. I definitely didn't think they were wearing like surfing wetsuits, but probably some sort of thin neoprene ability to get around in. And unfortunately, that was turned against us, even though where the police were saying that, call them frogmen, or
later they would say that.
yeah.
Yeah. So now, did either of you, I'm sure everybody's probably asked you this question, right? It's like, why didn't you fight back? It's easy for us to say, that especially when you know the outcome and you kind of know everything that's going to happen afterward. But was there ever a moment where you thought, I'm just going to book out of here? Or were you just, did you feel like in such a compromised situation, there was just no way that you were going to fight against this?
Well, of course you're thinking, how can I escape? What are my options? But this group had planned this for at least 6 months, and they prepared and attacked at about 3 a.m. when you're in your deepest sleep. So we woke up to guns, tasers, surrounding us, and they wisely threw the zip ties on the bed and had Denise tie me up. So I would be bolting at someone 10, 15 feet away with a gun facing me. So there wasn't a choice, and that was of fighting. That was by design. So what we were trying to do is minimize the physical damage. You don't bring a knife to a gunfight, and we're both in our underwear. And unfortunately, that was, again, going back to the police, they asked that multiple times, why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you fight back? And I said, because there wasn't a choice. And what was going to happen if I ran or did something, they were going to hurt Denise. And they also knew where my parents lived. So there was threats to your family. And so you can't really live with yourself if I did something irrational, and to hear Denise scream or whatever they did to her, like, I couldn't live with myself by getting her hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were in the house, they both gave you these blacked out goggles, and you said they put headphones on and they gave you a message of what you were going to do. Why do you think again, you don't want to get inside these crazy people's heads, but why didn't they just tell you like what they wanted you to do? Why'd they have to do a pre-recorded message? It just seems like a strange, like, extra detail. Have you ever understood why they might have done that?
Well, I think they like the theatrics of it. Even during the time, I felt like these guys had watched too many movies. I also believe it gave them time to keep setting up things. So you put it on recording, and then they could continue to put in the implication that they were going to try to control me in my house. So they were installing the camera, they're putting the tape up, they're doing these other options. So there is a probably logistical reason. Some of it too is that it's ominous and it's scary to have people plan that to that extent. Yeah,
it felt very, very organized, like this real like cartel that was like, it is like incredible that it wasn't a movie. Like it's just, and like you said, the whole thing plays out like a movie. So they were obviously very influenced by Hollywood on this one. Aaron, so Denise is taken away in a car. It's terrifying. You're sedated by this like NyQuil benzene kind of concoction, right? You're in and out of consciousness. You wake up. You decide, even though they tell you to not call the police, you do decide to call your brother, right? Who is an FBI agent.
Yes. So the kidnappers had told me they put a mirroring app on my phone so they could see text messages and phone calls I was making. And they also had installed a camera and I needed to stay within the camera's view. Otherwise, they would kill Denise or hurt her. Eventually, I realized the camera was probably not fully working because it continued to make a sound that should have stopped if it was fully loaded. I didn't think 911 was an option because if the kidnapper saw that I was calling 911, I'm going to police. I took the risk to call my brother because I assumed I could lie and say that he was supposed to come over. I needed to divert him. And he told me I needed to call the police because we needed the full force of law enforcement behind us.
Right.
And I agreed that he was right. And unfortunately, they made everything worse.
I mean, there's so many crazy twists in this story, but that is just incredible. So as soon as the police come, they immediately suspect you. Like you're immediately like the guilty one here. Do you have any idea now, looking back on this many years later and understanding how the police work and why you were immediately a suspect and not a victim?
Yeah, delved deep into police interrogation techniques and training since this to actually kind of make try to understand. For many years, I blamed myself. I said, "Well, what if I said this way, or if I had only just said X, they would have believed me." Now I realize that many times the police have made that determination before you even step in the room.
Mm.
They're not supposed to. They're supposed to evaluate evidence. I knew they would always look at me as a suspect because I was the last person to see Denise, and they should have looked at me as a suspect. Uh, Unfortunately, I think they just went to severe tunnel vision, and I mean, they literally left evidence at my house because they just flat out didn't believe me.
What did they leave again? They just didn't, like, overlooked things, right?
Yeah, the kidnappers had given me a portable cell phone charger because when I went to the bank, I couldn't have my phone die. I had told the police about that at least 4 times, and that was left at my home.
Mm.
The screens that the kidnappers cut to access or potentially access the house through the windows were just sitting next to the window uh, with clear cuts in them. And then took over a week for them to collect those pieces of evidence.
Right.
Actually took my brother's boss to call them to collect in.
Jesus.
Well, a common theme too, it seemed like the people who'd come in to question Aaron would say, I haven't been to the house yet, or haven't assessed the evidence yet. But they were just still convinced that
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like it seems like they watch too many Hollywood movies too.
I mean, it appeared so with the whole Gone Girl thing.
Yeah.
At one point, the kidnappers were sending me emails. The police had told my brother that they believed I was sending scheduled emails to myself because these emails were coming in during the time I'm being interrogated for 18 hours. One of those emails said that the kidnappers said they were going to call my phone around 9 p.m., which they ended up doing. But the police had turned my phone on airplane mode and then didn't track those phone calls until over 24 hours later, which actually led the 3 phone calls triangulated to South Lake Tahoe.
Which is where I was held.
Right. So you, Denise, to get to your part of the story, which also takes a crazy twist, you're put in the trunk of a car and driven. You don't even know where you're going because you've got your goggles on, right? I mean, that is my worst. I mean, all the things that happened to you are my worst fear, but to be in the trunk of a car for 2 hours, like you said, it was like being in a tomb. I mean, how did you get through it? Were you so sedated that you were able to kind of navigate that? Like, how did you, not knowing where you're going to go, being in basically a tomb, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, at first I was just trying to keep myself from panicking too much, and so just trying to stay calm and breathe, because I kept envisioning all the different ways my life was going to end, all the gruesome, violent, just tormented ways, and one of those would I just thought, what if something bad happens? They go to the side of the road and light the car on fire with me in it. I mean, that was one that's just like, I could only imagine what that would be like. Yes, I mean, it was hours that I was stuck in the trunk, and the sedative that was given to me was really strong to where I was in and out of consciousness for most of that. But towards the end, my body kept jolting awake because I was in so much pain from being on my side and crammed in the trunk of a car.
It's just terrifying. And then you get out and you're in this home. You don't have any idea where you were. And you keep hearing this like French music, right? Like, what was that all about? Like these French movies and French music. And like, was that to like divert you to think that maybe some French person had kidnapped you?
I think it's actually something he probably enjoyed listening to and watching. I think he had music going on just so I couldn't hear what he was doing. And I could hear him cleaning a lot, and laundry going, so I think it was just partly a way to deprive my senses of what else is going on.
And there seems to be a lot of, him trying to like sympathize with you and kind of say, like, try to make it seem like he was on your side, kind of manipulation going on. Like, there's going to be a guy, he's going to show up, he might hurt you. Like there was a lot of that, right? There was a lot of like, I'm the good cop, but there's going to be some bad actors here.
Yeah, I mean, that was from the beginning when I was tying Aaron up and wondering, my hands were shaking. Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I going to mess this up? And he says to me, "You're doing a good job. You are staying calm." So from the get-go, it was quite obvious that this was part of the strategy to have this polite demeanor as a way to build rapport and build trust. At the same time, in that type of situation, it's not comforting, it's even more terrifying because they have this incredible amount of restraint and had thought through all of these things. And so it seemed like this was a strategy to keep the victim compliant and calm. And sure enough, too, he explained how he had studied the psychology of victims. And so this whole time, it was an obvious attempt at manipulation. But although I can see his game, I can't call him out on it. I just have to go along with it. And in turn, I need to show him he can trust me if I can have any chance of trying to convince him to not kill me, or to try to minimize whatever potential torture or damage.
And you were were you convinced that you were probably not going to make it through at that
Yeah,
point?
I mean, anytime I was alone, I just kept thinking of my family and my life, and just telling myself, I might not make it to 30, but I've accomplished a lot in my life. And if this is the end, then I can go out proud, and I had a fulfilled life, and I had a great love. And, yeah, I was trying, you want to hold on to whatever hope you can, but at the same time, I didn't want that last second of my life to be spent terrified and
Right.
in shock. I wanted to feel ready if
Yeah.
it did come to that.
You're an amazing person that you're able to do that. And Mark, meanwhile, Aaron, meanwhile, you're being interrogated in a brutal way, and there's a lot of footage of it. Have you watched the footage? Can you even watch it? Is it triggering for you to watch it, or is it important, do you think, to watch?
I've watched it and I transcribed it.
Really?
So everything in the book is verbatim
Yeah.
as far as interrogations, minus like taking out a couple ums. And I have watched it in great detail. I think for me, in some ways, it's difficult. It's incredibly difficult, but it was also therapeutic because I realized I did tell him everything. The stuff that I was beating myself up about for years. I actually did say it.
Yeah.
The part I can't really watch, always breaks me down, is when they send my brother in.
You cry. Yeah.
And they lied to my brother saying I was having a schizophrenic breakdown, and they knew I killed her and he should get a confession from me. And to see him just come through the door and how much weight is carrying on his shoulders, that's where
that's
really hard for me.
Yeah, that description in the book is really powerful. Like he's sort of slumped over. He's got his sweat or his jacket on, his slicker on, and hands in his pockets, and he's just defeated. And I think you say that in talking to him, that he, at this point, I mean, he thinks you're innocent, but he's like, maybe he did have like they've even convinced him, like maybe my brother did have some sort of psychotic break, or but as soon as he talks to you, he realizes there's just no way. Like this is.
Well, I think too is really important. Is my brother is one of the smartest people I know, and for him, where he could be the least objective, he's trying to be objective, saying maybe I should go in with as open a mind as possible. What convinced him not was that I had told him the exact same thing over 15 hours ago, and we discussed all the possibilities that the police, the investigative leads they should be going through. And so why would I be telling them like, hey, they should be investigating X, they should be investigating Y, if I had committed this hoax? Or I was trying to cover up Denise's murder. It's shocking how much credit the police give me, because it's a crazy story, and there would be so many holes for me to fabricate this at the middle of the night. And really, if they really thought I made it up, they should just had humored me, followed along, and then it would collapse. But 18 hours into it, and you can't poke a hole into a crazy story. I'm either A, an incredible genius,
Right.
or B, is like I'm just telling the truth.
Yeah. And they didn't want to believe B. And this guy, the detective that was interrogating you, what was his name again? What was his last name? The guy was
Mustard.
Muster, mean Mr. Muster. Yeah, that guy is. I mean, the crazy thing is, then he wins. He's so off, and then he wins this award like later that year, right? As like best detective of the year. Like that must have just been maddening for you guys.
He got Officer of the Year.
Officer of the Year.
It's important to note that he was at the time he was a head of the police union for 10 years. He wields an incredible amount of power within that department and therefore the city. And it's unfortunate that they decided we'll just award him and therefore people won't think he screwed up. And the fact that he even accepted the award, it cheapens it for good officers and going forward, because I know there's officers within that department that deserve that award, and it definitely wasn't the guy who screwed up the biggest case of the year.
Denise, I don't want to get into the details of the sexual assault. It's horrible in so many ways. I just, I wondered, the decision you made in the book, you really go into quite explicit detail about what happened to you. And I wondered if there was ever a moment in making that decision where you're like, I don't need, like, you obviously made a conscious decision to explain exactly what happened. I'm curious to your thinking behind that when you revealed it in the book.
Yeah, I think above all, when we decided that we wanted to share what happened and write a book, that we wanted to be as raw and vulnerable as possible, to share, especially the assaults, the position that you're in, just the powerlessness, and also just the dehumanizing. I mean, it's just awful.
To not only are you sexually assaulted, but he tells you have to, for the camera, pretend to enjoy it. So it's like even worse than, it's just horrible and twisted. And he makes a story up, right? That somehow he has to show this to his colleagues because he messed up. We didn't talk about this, but you weren't supposed to be the kidnap victim. It was supposed to be Aaron's ex-girlfriend. At least that's what they told you. So anyway, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but you felt like it was important for you to tell the whole story,
Yeah. I think it's, I don't know, I guess in some ways, I didn't want to hide from it. I think in some ways it was healing just to like write it out and process through it. And I think to like kind of be able to explain all the different components of that torture. The best way to do that was to share it.
I think it's important for the fact that most sexually assault victims are females, and for males and people who have been fortunate to not having that type of awful trauma happen to you, to gain maybe some level of empathy and to see it through a victim's eyes is really important. And that's part of why we shared this, is through our points of view, is that we're trying to hopefully spread some empathy, and maybe the rush to judgment of particularly sexual assault survivors are constantly victim blamed or disbelieved.
Well, and another component too was that, later in the FBI affidavit for the arrest of Matthew Muller, which is the man who held me captive and raped me, the FBI wrote that in the sexual assault exam, there was, quote, no signs of non-consensual sex, implying that either the rapes didn't happen or they weren't that bad or weren't technically rapes. And that was something used against me. The fact that I did what I needed to do to get through it and survive and minimize the damage to myself and my body. But because there wasn't gruesome internal injury, somehow that's not rape. And I wanted to show, if not other people who might have that same viewpoint, but especially law enforcement who deal directly with victims of sexual assault, to see the whole picture of if you don't understand why you don't fight back, there's some examples why.
I mean, you guys were traumatized so many times, not just by the perpetrator here, but by law enforcement, and later we're going to find out the press and people you didn't even know. He videotaped. I mean, was there evidence? You mentioned that he videotaped these rapes. Did you know if there were that ever was revealed as evidence?
Yes, they found the
Okay.
videos of the assaults.
And they still didn't believe you.
Well, no, they did at that point. I mean, they found it. So, I'm released. It's reported that it's all a hoax. I went in for 2 days of questioning by Vallejo police and the FBI, and I went through the sexual assault exam. And then for months, it was just us that they were looking at and trying to threaten with prosecution. And meanwhile, the perpetrators were at large and in a position to harm other people. And in fact, Matthew Muller was connected to another home invasion just a couple months after ours. And that's the only reason why, he's linked to our case is from a different police.
So when you're released, you're dropped off in Huntington Beach, your hometown, many miles away from Lake Tahoe, and your neighbor, you find your neighbor, and your neighbor calls your parents who are up in Vallejo, right? And it's, again, that what happens to Aaron happens to you, where like immediately there's suspicion on the cops. Instead of you being this victim that's been traumatized and raped and treated horribly, you're treated like a victim again. It's just crazy story in that way. And they call you the Gone Girl based on, you didn't even know what that book was. I mean, you were aware of it, right? But you had no idea what are they even talking about?
Right. Yeah. I hadn't read the book or seen the movie. So for me, I'm like, how can I replicate something that I don't know anything about? And when my lawyer told me those were the reports at first, my thoughts, well, is that a good or a bad thing? Like, I mean, every second of every day was like, is it going to turn around? Is it going to finally feel like I'm free? Is this nightmare over? But it just kept being one blow after another, where it just felt like I was just being shoved into the dirt. And there was really little hope of getting out.
Yeah. And like you guys said, it was really thanks to this woman, Misty Caruso, who was a detective in, I guess, Dublin, California, that put together this, like, this is similar, this case to a case that she was investigating of a couple who were also the attempted a similar thing where they broke into the bedroom at night and asked the couple to do the same thing. But in this case, this guy fought back. And then as a result, right, there was a skirmish and the perpetrator escaped and left like a cell phone behind or something. I mean, that's how they were able to track this down to Lake Tahoe, this person down to Lake Tahoe. This is my understanding from reading your book. And this Misty Caruso put it together. This Matt Muller. So this guy, they find Matt Muller, he is like ex-military. And I don't want to talk too much about the perpetrator because why give him airtime? But you eventually, Denise, when they get this guy, you have the chance to confront him, right? In the trial.
2 years later, at the federal sentencing, when we were able to give our victim impact statements. That's the first time I saw him in person. And I knew that I was going to look him in the eye and have him see me. Because in that time in captivity, he had my body, but I was always blindfolded in front of him. And so it was important for me to have him see me, hear me, not only him too, but also all the media that was there, and to finally have a voice about what happened and share how it impacted my life.
What was that moment like from you looking at him? Were you able to, was it therapeutic or was it just an awful experience?
No, I mean, it was empowering. It was like, this is me, I'm not just another body. I'm not, I mean, this is, you can't look away. You have to see me. And he did. I mean, he, his eyes were on me as I was saying what I needed to say. And, I don't know, I guess that.
Yeah. Do you ever try to understand where this guy came from, or does that not matter to you? Like, do you ever try to, does it matter to you to forgive him or having compassion for him, or is that just not even in the equation? Like,
I mean, the forgiveness is less about him and more about the situation and me and my life. It's like I've kind of forgiven the fact that this has happened, not necessarily forgiven him for
yeah.
doing it to me, or to us. So kind of at that point of the victim impact statement, just kind of leaving it there. I don't need to figure out why he did it. He has his reasons, and that's up to him to live with and sit with and resolve on his own. Um, for us, it's, about us, each other, our families, and trying to take this horrible situation and use that energy and convert it into something hopefully positive and healing.
Yeah, our concern is that he doesn't hurt anyone else. We don't have any, I don't want him to be punished any more than just be separated from society because he's shown that he can't control himself. And that no other family deserves to go through trauma that we went through, but he doesn't deserve anything more. We don't need to hold on to hatred or anything to that effect. It's just a matter of protecting society from him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you guys ultimately are vindicated somewhat because, the truth does come out. You weren't lying. This all happened to you. The one thing that's a real mystery is that they caught Muller, but you feel that there was two people in the room, at least two people in the room, right? So there is, you do still feel like there might be somebody else out there that worked with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know there's at least two other people were in the house along with Muller. And unfortunately, the same investigators who were absolutely confident I killed Denise and then absolutely confident that we committed a hoax are the same ones who are absolutely confident he acted alone. And we desperately tried to get new investigators to just give us fresh eyes. We were denied that despite multiple requests and even complaints to the Department of Justice. And it's difficult for us to believe that they've handled this investigation or thoroughly examined all the evidence. Ideally, it would be comforting if he actually did it by himself, because then we would know that there's not risk to other people. But we're not going to get gaslighted into what we saw and heard and know. And
yeah. Do you know if the people that were assaulted in Dublin, did they recall seeing more than one person, or?
Not from my understanding. We believe that was handled by one person. There's similarities to our case, but there's actually stark differences that we point out in the book.
So this story is also a love story because you guys, what's hard to put together is that when this actually happened, you weren't like, Aaron, you were just coming out of another relationship, and Denise, you weren't really sure what your status was with him at that time. But as a result of this unbelievable event happening to you guys, it brought you really, really close. And, some couples might not actually survive this, right? I mean, maybe initially it's wonderful to see each other, but what do you think it is about this shared experience that has made you guys so much closer?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron and I, our connection from the beginning was, it was instant. It was easy. We had a chemistry and quickly fell in love. Aaron was just in a difficult place in his life because of the recent breakup. So that night of the home invasion was a turning point in our relationship, but we had a really long, meaningful conversation, and we were moving forward together and committing to each other. And so I think the foundation of our feelings for each other were part of that. But then also at the same time too, we were empathetic towards each other. We never blamed one another for anything that happened. We had strong family support and friend support. So I think all of those things combined really helped us grow. I mean, we understood each other in a way that no one else could because of our shared trauma.
Else ever understand that? experience. You're both traumatized, and you're married. Congratulations, a beautiful child. So this is somewhat of a happy ending. We want it to be a happy ending, and yet we both, we all know that you live with this trauma. How have you managed to get through it? Have you had to go through a lot of therapy? How have you managed to cope with what happened to both of you guys?
Yeah, we've gone to couples therapy, individual therapy for years to help us process through not only this trauma, but just to better understand ourselves. And I would recommend anybody to try therapy, or because it's an opportunity to get messy and have it be self-contained, doesn't have to spill over into your rest of your life. And just by discussing those options, and you can maybe find an answer, but you also don't have to have an answer. And more important for us is moving forward is our love for each other, our love for our families and our daughter. And we've been able to get back to a profession that we dedicate our lives to as a physical therapist, and in a way start giving back to people through therapy, or hopefully we can give some strength by sharing our story, and we can take this tragedy and make something positive out of it.
Yeah, and you had mentioned that, now you look at innocent people in a different way, right? Like you imagine now that there's a lot of people probably in prison that are innocent, that might have been subjected to the same kind of interrogation that you were subjected to, and weren't strong enough to withstand that kind of pressure. And are you sure of that? Do you feel like you want to help those kinds of people? Like how is that? How do you hope that your story helps those kinds of people?
Oh, without question, there's innocent people due to falsely confessing. And I would say it's not necessarily even a level of strength, because these are trained professionals who have practiced putting this kind of psychological torture on people in interrogation rooms. I was, in many ways, because I knew Denise was alive, it gave me some resolve not to confess. But when you're in that room, you just want to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And many times people think, well, I'll say what they want me to say, and when I get out, I can take it back. And that's not the case. So one thing I would recommend is, if you go speak to the police, you have a lawyer present. You
Yeah.
always assert your
Why didn't
right?
Now tell me why you didn't get a lawyer right away? I didn't totally understand that.
Yeah, it's because I was naive. I believed that that the police would evaluate the evidence objectively, and the evidence pointed to a kidnapping. And I had the naive belief that only guilty people need lawyers. And now I know you need someone on your side. You need a ref in the game. And I don't know if it would be different if I had. I think they still would just double down, because there was so much tunnel vision. But yeah, I would highly recommend.
Yeah,
Never
I need a
speak.
lawyer. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, a big part of why he didn't was because he didn't want to alienate them. He wanted to stay and help and keep talking to them to participate in trying to find me. And they took advantage of that, so
It also delay. I believed it was going to delay things. I knew the clock was ticking to find Denise. I do, going forward, I'm hoping to advocate for reform within interrogations.
It just seems
Illinois,
amazing that it was legal what they did to you, right?
it,
Like, you're lying. We know you're lying. I mean, this kind of crap. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I must deny them. I didn't lie over 100 times, and they just say, we don't believe you. So
And mocking you and stuff. The
yeah,
frogmen. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
Illinois just passed a law that doesn't allow deceptive techniques in interrogations to juveniles. Oregon and New York are looking at similar laws. Hopefully that will get passed in all 50 states, and then not just for juveniles, but for adults as well. Because I think there is a better way of interrogation, which is more journalistic and just gathering information. Currently, they have a guilt presumptive interrogation technique, and it allows for tunnel vision and confirmation bias. And there's estimate of 200,000 innocent people in prison, and many of those have falsely confessed.
Denise, how are you doing? What you've gone through is just unspeakable. What kind of message do you want to give to other victims of rape, sexual assault? Because I know this wasn't the first time that it happened to you. That was amazing that this had actually happened to you even before this incident with Muller. So what advice would you give to other women?
Oh, I mean, I'm hoping that in sharing our story that there is some level of hope for people, going through a trauma, and especially having your body violated. I mean, that's the ultimate insult, because you can never escape your body. You have to live with it for the rest of your life. And it could be a constant reminder of being attacked and violated. And so, I mean, it's a difficult road to try to heal from and recover from, but it is possible. And, it doesn't necessarily ever go away, but you can learn strategies to help get you through it, especially if you PTSD and triggers. And, some you have to kind of face head on, or at least acknowledge what they are, to be able to even know how to move forward from it. And I mean, one of the biggest things is to know that you're not alone. For a long time we were just hopeless, and maybe felt like it was our fault that we were being treated this way, because it's just happening to us. But then we learn more and see how the re-victimization is quite common. And so our experience as victims is shared by many others. So hopefully for those people who are suffering silently, to know you're not alone, there is hope, and we do support you.
In closing here, so do you feel you've had closure? I mean, you sued the Vallejo police, right? And you won that lawsuit, and they wrote sort of an apology to you, but they've never actually like personally apologized. Like Mustard has never showed up to your home and said, you know what, I was wrong. Kenny Park, who had that horrible press conference, has never apologized to you. Do you feel like is that important to you to actually have them like in person apologize to you? Do you think that would give you full closure on this horrible event in your lives?
Apology doesn't matter at this point to us. And we care about them actually making sustainable changes that would improve their policing and their relationship with the community. Unfortunately, Detective Mustard has been promoted. Even the FBI agent who poorly handled this case has been promoted. And for us, it's what gives us maybe closure or moving forward is the pillars that matter the most in our lives. And that's family, our jobs, or being parents. And I think we care more about actions and words. And that's what we're hoping by, again, maybe sharing that other law enforcement can read this book and not fall into the same trap as these detectives and agents did.
Well, you didn't say it, so I'm going to say it. I hope those guys lose their jobs after your book comes out, but whatever. I can hope. That's my dream. Let me talk to me about, this is a book, I know we only have a few more minutes, but this is a story about writing. This is a podcast about writing. When you had to write this, did you have like a ghostwriter? What was the process of writing it? Did you just kind of say your thoughts and then have somebody, or did you actually write them down? Or like, how did you guys write the book?
Yeah, I mean, we both wrote our first person perspectives of what happened. We had an incredible co-author, Nikki Egan, who was an investigative journalist for decades. She wrote a book about Cosby and supported all the Cosby survivors and gave them a voice and a platform. So she was a wonderful advocate for us in really making sure that the story was told the way that we wanted it, and that would best be representative of what we went through. And so she helped guide us through the writing process and things that we might not be seasoned in, but it was
it was riveting the way it was written. So you did a good job.
Great.
Yeah. But because also not just riveting, but also just to get inside what you're both thinking during those times. And one of the things I thought it must have been challenging, because this happened, 7 years ago or 6 years ago, to remember kind of what you were feeling then, rather than having it be colored by what you know now, kind of thing, like trying to go back to the person you were in that interrogation room, or the person you were being held hostage in this place in Lake Tahoe. Like, was that to go back and remember those feelings? Was that tricky?
Yes. And part of what was helpful is Denise had written a lot just for own therapeutic reasons. I had written stuff down just not necessarily for a book, just to help us process. I think there's a lot of value to put pen to paper.
And that was initial, like just months after the kidnapping. We also documented and journaled a lot because it was preparing for a defense and the event of being prosecuted. So it was helpful for us to get those details down so early on.
And when I was writing, say, a chapter like the interrogation, and talk with Nikki and having her give me notes and keep editing to refine it to make a compelling narrative. I knew if I felt a little sick when I read it and wrote it, then I was onto something.
Mm.
And or if Denise was writing something and read it to me and made me feel a little sick, or vice versa, we could tell that was hitting the emotional chord and really put us back in that moment.
That's hard. Well, thank you both for sharing your incredible story, and I wish you only the best, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Take care. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.